Hi everyone, my name is Adam. I'm an economist and I'm currently with
the Swiss ambassador to Singapore and Brunei Darrusalam, Frank Grütter.
That's right. Thank you so much for not just coming along the hike with us, but agreeing to sit down and have a conversation with us. So I guess the first question is, how did you find the hike?
It was very interesting because I could speak to three different very young people with an international background, a Swiss student, a Dutch student, a British student, and the conversation were not similar across the three, but they had different questions, and it's not only me or them learning from me, but also me hearing from them what they do, what they've done in their life, what their plans are.
Right. So what do you think was maybe the most interesting or memorable part about the conversations that you had today?
I think getting to know the aspirations of these young people and also in their lives and their different backgrounds, what's driving them and also why at all they have come to Singapore to study. These were students all from Europe, but they decided to travel the 10,000 kilometers to come here and get an experience at the Singapore University and an Asian experience in their life.
Yeah, so you mentioned something you found interesting was the amount of inspiration that you could find here. And I'm sure being very well-traveled ambassador, you have experienced many things and have taken inspiration from a lot of other places as well. Do you mind maybe sharing with us something that you have found personally really inspiring in your line of work?
In the line of work or in Singapore?
Well, in your line of work.
In my line of work, what is really inspiring is that my job is not the same. It's every 4 years I have a completely different job. And it brings together, it's very diverse in the sense that it brings together politics with economics, with law, with culture, with project work, with security policy. So you cover, as a diplomat, you cover, I would say, almost all aspects of life. You also have to do with Swiss people who have problems, or with Swiss people who get married, who have childbirth. So visa, it's just an extremely diverse work, and so you wake up and you can never be too sure what's happening during the day.
Yeah, I guess that also keeps it somewhat interesting in your day-to-day. And how long have you been in Singapore for?
I came here in August 2026, so it's a bit more than 2 years now.
Right, and you said you will change your posting every 4 years, is it?
Yes, that's every 4 years. Generally, we will have to move on.
I see. So what has been your favorite part about your current posting in Singapore so far?
Oh, difficult to say. I think because there are so many of it. I have to say I'm fascinated by Singapore, how you carved out a place in the world very successfully out of almost nothing in 1965. I think how, having witnessed now only a little part of that longer journey Singapore has gone through, is very interesting. And the fact, which is something close to Switzerland, that you have also, like us, 4 national languages, different ethnic groups living here in Singapore. In Switzerland, it's not ethnic groups, but people with different languages coming with different traditions, and living peacefully and successfully with one another, and also integrating a lot of foreigners into your country. I think that's an amazing experience here to see, which relates to me also, because I see the same thing in Switzerland.
Yeah, I think that's a really underrated part about living here. I mean, I'm Singaporean myself, and it's so easy to take that multinational, multicultural aspect for granted, because it's really not easy to develop a place and an environment where so many different kinds of people can live together harmoniously. You also touched on having a diverse population and having a migrant population as well, including earlier during your speech. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on how you think having such a diverse workforce or such a diverse environment that people are living in contributes to helping youths become more prepared for the world ahead?
I think it helps if you grow up in a, let's say, multi-ethnic, very international society. I'm not saying you have to at any cost, but it helps if you want to be world ready in a certain sense, because you're already used to work or to be around people who look different, who think differently, and also to discover their view and how they see the world, and to hear different languages, and maybe that's an inspiration to learn other languages, which is something I would recommend to every young person, because language is very often the key into getting to know society much better and to understand other people and their culture much better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just languages, right? I mean, when we approach a new culture, there's so many different things we have to learn. Sometimes even the way we eat in terms of manners, that also differs quite a bit. Speaking about the environment that people are currently living in or that they grew up in, something really interesting that you mentioned earlier in your speech is that in Switzerland, 65% of people go through vocational training, right? I think maybe that's something very unique, because I think not everywhere in the world there are such opportunities to do an apprenticeship, or if there are, it doesn't come very easy perhaps. So what do you think is the best part about having these sorts of opportunities in terms of apprenticeship and hands-on learning perhaps, and for those of us who maybe don't have access to those opportunities, what can we do in place of that? Perhaps if you have any thoughts.
I think as I mentioned in my speech, a big advantage to have a vocational training system and apprenticeships, because I'm convinced that an economy doesn't need only academics and doesn't need only people who have studied. You need them too, but you don't need 100% in the labor market of those. So you need really people, and you realize in your own life, right? When you bring a car to the mechanic, you want him to know what he does. When you go to an optometrist, you want him or her to know about your eyes and how it's done. And you don't need a university degree, at least not in Switzerland, to be an optometrist. But so you want to be sure that you're in safe hands in all aspects of your life, and therefore it's good to have people, they have learned the trade. And it's important then when you have a vocational training that this is not the end of it, that those people who then want to go on or have maybe second thoughts later on in their life and say, well, I could also go and study, that they still have the path to go to a university or a university of applied science in Switzerland. Right. And I think one strength of our system is that it is flexible. It allows also for the late bloomers in a way to say, okay, now I can do something. I find my way and can work my way up in the labor market.
Right. And when we talk about people wanting to be safe in their day-to-day lives, I think that a part of that is not necessarily just in terms of our day-to-day work or people that we come across, but it also, as we live our lives and interact with more people, I think an important part about that is perhaps building trust. So I wanted to ask, how do you think, or what do you think is the best way for people to build these people-to-people connections and trust, especially across different cultures?
Probably it is hands-on experience. It's not something you can learn via internet and your mobile phone, but it's something you have to experience yourself.
Just like this hike?
Yeah, for example. And you can do it. You don't even have to travel. You can be here, or you can be in Zurich and say, okay, I just try to get more connections with people who have a different background than mine. And I'm not only speaking of people who are foreigners, but people who just have a different background. And that can be done through sports, for example, team sports, where you meet people from the academics to people who do handiwork. And it can be done you seek groups that are who are mostly made up of people who are foreigners. So you don't have to travel. You can also find it in the place where you live. Additionally, also obviously you can go and travel. You can go and study abroad, work abroad. I mean, that will boost this experience, and you will see. People are in a way very much the same at the end, because they want to have a good life, they want to have good friends, a family that looks after them, they want to live in a peaceful society that works. These are the basic needs which are the same everywhere, and that's already a connection you can have.
Yeah, and I'm sure in your line of work as well, being to so many different places, you've met so many different kinds of people with a lot of different values and passions, thoughts as well. How do you think, especially in perhaps an increasingly more complex world today, people can have these interactions while still sharing their own thoughts, still being true to themselves and sharing their own passions, even though it might be so diverse?
I think it's good when you know your roots, like when you are rooted in somewhere, and you can fall back on always, even though you're maybe in uncharted territory. Okay, that's who I am. These are the values. The environment can change a lot.
Right.
But your values usually stay more or less the same. I don't say they stay exactly the same, but values can be a good guidance in your life when you say, okay, what did my parents teach me? What did the schools teach me, or other people who were important in your life? And take this a bit as a lodestar when you're in a situation where you don't really know good from bad.
Right.
And that can help.
What would you say your roots are, personally?
Well, my roots, I grew up in Switzerland in I would say a rather rural area, but with a lot of very good friends still back from that time, also from college, from your university. So I know that I always have a family, obviously. So I know I have people there who, even if I would feel uneasy, or if I would run into problems, this gives me some security. I know I have people to call, people to meet who would look after me. And then I would say just I'm a person who's A, very open, B, I think I'm not prejudiced, or not to a large extent. Probably everyone is a little bit, but I approach people very open-minded, and I don't put them into a drawer already, just in the way how they look. And listen. I think important is that you just listen a lot. And as I said earlier on, there's a reason why people do things, and just try to find out why are they how they are, and why do they the things they do.
So speaking about doing why people are the way they are, or why they do certain things, has there maybe been an experience that you have had that really changed or shaped the way you see things?
An experience, I could not point to one experience that really now shaped me in this intercultural context. I think it's really the sum of all my experiences of traveling and working abroad. And what helps is when you will always have bad experiences here and there, but hopefully the majority of them will be positive. But take the good things with you in any society you are living in, because there are things you dislike obviously. There are certain things I don't like in Switzerland too, try to focus on the positive things where you can say, oh, that's interesting, and that's something they do very well, and oh, that's something I find fascinating, and let you drive by positive factors, not negative ones.
So what do you miss the most about home?
The mountains and the cold, I would say. I'm happy being here, that it's warm, that has many, many advantages, but sometimes just to have the crisp, fresh mountain air with a little bit of snow under your feet, that's something I will miss.
Yeah, I mean, I don't suppose we get much snow here. There's not really any mountains as well.
Yeah.
So is going to the mountains something that you regularly did when you were younger?
Yeah, we did a lot. So we were really an outdoor family as I grew up. So we went hiking quite a lot, and really also strenuous hikings. And so my mother and my father were really into hiking, being in the mountains, making fires, putting things on the grill and frying your food, and we were quite an adventurous family.
Right. I don't suppose you do much of that now, do you?
No. It's a bit different.
So what do you do in your free time now, if you have any?
I have. Or you have to carve out free time, because when you're an ambassador, you have I would have commitments any day of the week. In the evening, I could go to 3 different events. But when you have a family, also you balancing out a little bit. So I still can do things. I do a bit of play tennis, quite a bit, squash. Then going to concerts here in Singapore, or we're traveling also quite a bit whenever we have holidays. We travel, we try to discover the region, which is really one of the big perks being here, to be in such an interesting region like Southeast Asia. And then reading. I love reading everything that gets in my hands, from novels to newspapers to magazines, a bit.
And what would you say is maybe the most challenging part about being an ambassador?
Probably balancing, finding a good balance between work and family. I think, especially when you have smaller children like myself, then, because as I said, you have invitations every evening.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to say no to some of them, because you have to say, okay, now you have work is important, but you also have a family, and they should see their dad from time to time as well. And finding the right balance, that's sometimes a bit difficult. And then just keeping, it's not the healthiest life being an ambassador, because you have a lot of lunches and dinners, and you have there's always alcohol involved, so you have to be very disciplined in a way that you also can say no. Okay, I don't eat everything that they serve you. You don't drink alcohol every time it's on offer. You do enough sports that you're still healthy. I mean, it's silly, but it's in a way you have. It's true. You have to make sure you're healthy.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for your time. But before we end this off, maybe I'd like to ask you one last question. Throughout your different travels and your experiences, what is the most important thing that you've learned about people?
The most important thing about people, maybe what I was referring to, they are people in a way are similar, because the basic needs are the same everywhere, right? I mean, you have this Maslow's pyramid that can differ when you're going up, but I would say that the basic needs are the same. And as I said before, don't be prejudiced. Everyone is a little bit, of course, but don't be too prejudiced. Give people a chance, be open, and listen to them. And you will find that there are many interesting people, and they have all interesting things to say, and just learn from the positive things they do.
Right. So that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.